Welcome to the Creative Industry Insight Podcast, a podcast that looks at various roles in the creative world. I'm your host, Bobby. Today's guest, Editor Ali Greer, joins us to talk about their work on Barry. Please be warned, there are heavy spoilers in this episode, so sit back and relax as we jump into the conversation with Ali. Hi Ali, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I know we're here down to talk about Barry, which you've been working on since season 3. Yeah, as I said, Barry, the show is wrapping up, or when this comes out, it has wrapped up, and I'm really excited to see where it goes because the season 4 has really changed in sort of pace and tone, especially when there's like a mid-season time jump as well.
It's been a season 3 and 4, definitely a new tone for the show and kind of expand on what they established in seasons 1 and 2. And yeah, I hope people enjoy it. It's a wild ride.
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed season 3 and 4 more than 1 and 2. And I guess with the change of tone, you kind of get a different side of Barry in terms of a character, but also story. It's weird because I feel like there's like slight parallels with another HBO show, Succession. Because you're not supposed to like any of these characters because they're all dirtbags, but you can't help but to like them.
Yeah, I think that the honesty in all of the characters is what is really appealing and fun to watch, even in a show like Barry, where everyone's kind of a monster.
Yeah, and it's like, but you just can't help but sort of not necessarily root for them, but there's that sort of, there's just something about them where you just think like, oh, I just can't get enough of them. Like, for example, like NoHo Hank.
He's the best. No,
Uh,
Hank is the best.
I know, like just everything about him just makes you laugh and just the smile, the looks, and even his outfits.
Hmm.
Concentrating on yourself because you joined in season 3. How did the project come about for you? And like, what was it? Something that what was it about the show that wanted you make you to join on and continue between the 2 seasons as well?
Yeah, I came on to Barry season 3 and I was super excited to join the team and to work with Bill. I knew the editors seasons 1 and 2, and when they had other projects going on, they looked for new editors. So I interviewed with Bill Hader, and he's a really sweet, nice person and easy to talk to. And so during my interview, we just talked about movies and foreign films and all sorts of different things. We laughed a lot, and I think that that was a good sign that we got along well. Because most of the interviews I go on, it's like they should know I'm qualified based on the work I've done, but it's more just like making sure you get along with the people and really being able to connect and understand their sensibilities and what they like and what they might not like. And so, yeah, interviewed, and then they hired me on like in 2019, and then the pandemic happened in 2020. And so they put the show kind of on hold for until the vaccines came out. And so I got hired in 2019 and then didn't start work until 2021. So it's like a 2 year period where I was like, hopefully that will happen. I don't know. I did 3 shows in between. So I was always nervous that the timing wouldn't work out. But so excited to work on Barry. I just think that the tone is really fun and the characters are so interesting. And the stories in seasons 3 and 4 have been really awesome. So finishing with season 3 last season, it always is conceptualized as one big story, seasons 3 and 4. And so I was kind of always thinking that I would return for seasons 4, just if I was asked back. And because I love the story and I love working with Bill Hader and the team and all of the creative aspects of that style of comedy show are really fun and fulfilling.
I think once you get in with a team and work with certain people, there's always that you kind of want to sort of continue that collaboration, especially when you kind of get on with someone as well. As you're mentioning before, that when you get interviewed, it's not just about if you're qualified, but it's also about getting along with the people, and especially when in the edit process, where I'm not sure what the edit time is between each episode and how long you have, but you're kind of stuck in a room with another person going through each episode, or in Barry's case, like every other episode. So you'll probably sort of want to make sure that you're not going to drive each other crazy by just like sort of sitting there working away.
Exactly. Editing is one of those rare things where you can't really escape each other. You're kind of in a room for 6 months, one on one, or a few people in the room together. So you really have to make sure that you enjoy their company and get to know them. And yeah, it's a very fun and intimate relationship. It's great.
As well, like as you're mentioning as well, like in the edit suite, you can't really leave, and because everything's sort of on the table there for you ready to cut, I can imagine, because when you're sitting there with somebody like Bill Hader, who's got so many different hats on in terms of that, he's the writer, exec producer, director, and also starring in it. For some strange reason, I always kind of like when I think of that, I can always imagine it as a case of like he's sitting there and then he'll give you different notes but with like different hats on. So he'll be there as like an exec being like, this is incorrect. And then as a director, he's like, actually, we should be doing this. And then as an actor, he's like, oh, I can't watch this take. No, not this take.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes he goes through the different processes of all the different roles he plays on the show. I think the nice thing is that he knows the show so intimately, and so every part of it is like really well known to him, and he's very good at tracking exactly what he did in every take and kind of the moments that he's really looking for in terms of performance and making sure that that always comes across. I'd say he's generally not too like executive producery. I think he always just focuses on story and focuses on making sure the characters feel honest and trying to fit in jokes if there's a time to do that. I'll say he doesn't love watching himself, and so that can get a little tricky as he just gets like, oh, did I never do the thing? Did I never not have my eye like that? Like sometimes it's frustrating as he would watch himself, or same with other characters too, but I think it's tricky for him, but yeah, most of the time he trusts us and our eye for performance in terms of kind of where his acting is at. We focus on story a lot.
I think it kind of like proves that he's human, right? Like
Yeah,
like
exactly.
in terms of like when you're watching, say for example, like this, well, I'll have to edit this back, but I hate hearing the sound of my own voice. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. So it's quite nice to hear somebody who's working at such a high level also have that sort of same fear, being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, or I said that, or I've asked the question in that sort of manner.
Definitely. Like the exciting thing about Bill is that he's very humble and he's very funny. And so the two things create a very good, relaxed environment, and everyone can laugh at his performance or be moved by it. And it's all the same. It's all with a smile and taken with ease, which is nice.
Well, no, that's good to hear as well, knowing that your boss is like that and you can sort of work alongside someone like that because it makes it a little bit easier. And I guess as well with the the editing process as well, where he's so involved, it's just like probably makes it easier to make certain cuts or go through certain scenes.
Yeah, I think that Bill, having written the show and directed and acted in a lot of it as well, it's always on his mind. And so if you say something in the edit room one day, he might call you the next day and say, I've been thinking about that thing that you said, or certain little details stick in his head, finds new and interesting ways of putting things together. And that's been like the fun part of working on the show is it's a story with a lot of twists and turns. And so to keep it all straight, it's nice that he's been so intimate with the story for so long.
Yeah, and I guess if you're so close as well, with a story, then you'll know the ins and outs, and you sort of, I guess, maybe confidence not the right word, but you're so you know what you want as like the end goal is just like the journey getting there.
Yeah, I think when a scene works, it really works for everybody. And when things are not working, thankfully, most of us are feeling it. One of the unique things about working on Barry is that I guess this kind of started a little bit midway through last year, is that he would have both me and Frankie, the other editor, in the room at all times. And so whether it was my episode or Frankie's episode, we both were there. And so I would be at a computer working, and Frankie's on the couch with Bill. And then we'd switch for the episodes. And so not only do I know all the details of the episodes I edited, I know all the details of all the episodes I didn't edit, which is a really unique and rare thing. And so as we go through the whole season, I kind of sometimes forget, like, oh yeah, that's not my episode, but I know every detail and I was there for every moment of the editing process. I guess besides the editor's cut, which me and Frankie did separately. But coming together like that and all being on a team in such a close way really helps, making sure that the story tracks from episode to episode and that the style and pace and performances are really consistent. And that's something that we did on Barry, and I've never done it before or since. And I think it's a really awesome and unique way of working.
You could have stole one of my questions there because I was going to mention about sitting in with Frankie Goodman, the other editor, because you're mentioning that you would all sort of sit in on each other's episodes and then to sort of basically work with one another, but then also on top of that, have the show aligned so that the tone is correct, that there's certain moments hit and other moments where people sort of get shocked at moments, but then also are laughing at another moment. When you're sort of sitting in with one another, doing each other's episodes, what is the collaboration there? Because is it a case that you would do your work and then he would watch it back to see what you've done? Or is it a case that you'd be working it scene by scene to then get notes from each other so that you're sort of all on the same page?
Between me and Frankie?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say on most of the shows I work on and with Barry, whenever the editors get their specific cuts done, I'll make sure and watch the other editors' cuts. And usually we'll have a chat on the phone and just kind of talk about, yeah, what's working, what's not, what pace feels right, what pace feels slow, too fast, or there are things that aren't making sense or aren't tracking. And then also watching each other's cuts, we make sure and say like, oh, there's a detail in your episode that I really have to set up a little more in mine, or I really need to make sure that this character feels upset here and is continuing that feeling into the next episode. And so it's super important to always like watch each other's cuts. And so for me and Frankie, we'll finish our cuts and then I'll say, if you want to watch anything, it's all ready for you. And then usually he'll come back with like some thoughts or notes, or we'll be able to discuss it. And then going in with the producer, then we'll have kind of like a united thought about things and be able to have an understanding of the things we're both struggling with characters, or if there's bigger story points that we need to hit or rework or kind of get more detail on. It's very helpful. And then when we sit in with the producer, I think depends on how specifically Bill is feeling that day, whether he wants to go scene by scene or kind of watch through the whole episode and take notes. Depends on which episode of the season. Like for the first couple episodes, we just went scene by scene and went through his director's cut. And then by episode 5, he watched through the whole episode and then gave me some notes for about an hour. And then I went away and came back with a revised episode, and it was pretty much done. And so certain episodes took longer than others. And yeah, it's all just kind of dependent on how close the story is working and bits and pieces that we feel like need to get worked on. But sometimes the performance just hits, and if I can feel it and he can feel it, then it worked. Bill just lets it live, which is nice. Working with somebody who trusts you and yeah, being able to have an understanding of how a scene should go is very helpful.
I think that's like a massive thing though, if you've got someone who trusts you to sort of go about it and sort of just to get it done. But then also the idea of just breaking down what someone has as a sort of direct and showrunner has for you, and then going back to edit it and then having it done. That must be quite a unique experience as well. That it's just a case of somebody so confident in their pit material that they know that someone's done it pretty much 90%. They just need a little bit of a tweak and then it's perfect.
Yeah, I guess it just totally depends on the scene and the episode and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, like I think each episode has like sometimes has a bit of a tonal shift. You know how one moment it can be quite comedic and then one moment it can be more of a darker tone. This is kind of like a sort of two for one sort of question, but how do you go about it in the edit to get the balance right? Then also, what is the difference between cutting a scene that has a lot of humor and then also a dramatic scene?
I guess a lot of editing is just watching things back, and if it feels right, it works. So I guess a lot of it is kind of intuition and having comedic timing that works. And so it definitely is specific tone for Barry in that you're always looking for the tone of keeping the drama and keeping the honesty of the characters going. And then once in a while, things would be very funny. And so I don't know if there's specifically something different in terms of editing for drama or editing for comedy, but I think sometimes it's what you leave out in terms of if there's a dramatic moment, you don't want to cut the tension. And so sometimes there'll be a joke here and there, even though it is a comedy or it's somewhat of a comedy. Sometimes we'll cut the joke to make sure that the drama carries with you. So in season three, there was a scene where Barry kind of pins Sally up against a wall and is yelling at her and freaking out. And then he leaves and she kind of walks back and sits down. And then she used to kind of like blow it off and was like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And she kind of made a joke. And I remember talking with Bill, and he was like, I think we have to cut the joke because you want to make sure that you feel sad with her. And sometimes a joke can get in the way of that. And so I think it's just a matter of making sure that in whether the characters are being funny or whether they're being emotional and dramatic, that it feels honest to them and that they portray like an honesty of however they're feeling. And so making sure it feels authentic and yeah. And then sometimes you have a scene with like Fred Armisen that's just so funny that you're always just trying to highlight exactly all the funny, weird facial movements he's making. And then you really focus on that versus something with like Sally and Barry talking in the prison. You're really looking for that moment where Sally has a twinkle in her eye or she feels like very emotional. So I think you're always looking for those bits and pieces that make the performance really stand out and make you connect with the characters. And it shows a moment of like pureness of authenticity. And I think that's also one of the gifts of working with such multifaceted and talented actors is they're giving you a lot. So somebody like NoHo Hank is incredible at both being extremely funny, even just with sitting there in the right costume or something, but then also can deliver such passionate, important, dramatic points of the story. So, one of the best things about working on Barry, and then also, I guess that's it. It's just one of the best things about working on Barry.
I guess as well, because you have those comedic elements and also jokes, there must be a number of takes where sometimes they have a joke, but then also throughout different takes, like the joke evolves. So actors are having a time to sort of improv and carry it on. Do you have those moments where you sort of sit in the edit and you're just like, man, I wish we could just keep this in because I'm just cracking up too much. But also I need to cut it down to either make sure that we don't overdraw in the scene or make the episode too long, but I don't know where to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where you have to cut the things you love most about the scene, but if it's not moving the story forward, then often it's a good candidate for the chopping block. But there's definitely like watching through the footage, you watch the scene of NoHo Hank and Cristobal giving a presentation at Dave and Buster's. I think it's in season four, episode two, where they're kind of moving around in a circle, giving a presentation about kind of like being together as a team and working together. And after the first five takes of going around in a circle, they came up with on set the idea that NoHo Hank would run around the camera to get back to his cue point. And so they made like a physical joke in the middle of working through the footage. And I think that's like always the fun thing about working with somebody who's so funny as a director is after watching it over and over and over, he gets bored and he's like, wait, 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 there's a way of making this funnier. And so then watching as an editor, you're like, yeah, this it's not quite there's no spark. You get a little sick of it, and then he'll feel the same way and add something in. So that's always kind of fun. And then, yeah, in terms of editing, sometimes you do have to cut the joke or cut your favorite part of the joke, but you hope that that makes the story and the viewers lean in more. So it's always the goal.
I think that's, when you're working with comedians, but it's not just even comedians, it's like actors who just sort of know that they can still, even after whatever, take five, six, seven, eight, so on and so forth, that they can know that they can still add to the scene. It's like, look, I know we've got a really good take, but let's just do one or two more where I can absolutely smash it and make it even better.
Yeah, and sometimes like a director, you'll see like they do all the takes and they get the take that they like and they want, and then they'll ask the actor, "Is there anything you want to do or try?" And sometimes the actor will have something that they think is funny or dramatic or something that will add to the scene, and so that's always fun to see as well.
Yeah, and I think that example that you gave with Noho Hank running around in Dave and Buster's, because even that scene where you're just sort of following them around could be seen as like quite dull, but with the sort of energy of Noho Hank and then also the seriousness of Cristobal, it's just sort of like chef's kiss how it's done, and you could have a good laugh to it as well.
Yeah, I think that that's always the goal is that something that's exposition-y or moving the story forward can feel a lot less so if it's hidden in a joke. So it's one of the best parts of Barry.
I think as well in the edit where you talk about the jokes, do you ever have moments where you are able to create jokes in terms of because of sound design? So I think a good example of that is in season three where Barry picks up the bomb in the back box and then it says, "You have picked up the bomb," and it's in a
Yeah.
different voice and tone. Which again is just like it just works so well and also gives it a more comedic element. Are there times where because it's those sort of sounds get added on in post, do you get involved in what could be the funniest sort of solution? Not solution,
Oh
sorry, but
yeah.
the suit's final the funny final product of the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things about being an editor is you're always kind of filling in where the scene needs. And so in the case of the bomb making sound in season three, the bomb made sound. And the funny part was the sound was really loud. And then I don't remember, we were all in the room together. I think it was probably Bill that said, like, what if the bomb spoke? Like it had a voice. And then we were laughing, and then we were laughing at like what it would say, and we came up with "You've picked up the bomb." And then we joked around that if you hit it, it switched languages. So I think it starts in Japanese and then it switches to Korean language midway through when it gets like set down really hard. And so it's like some kind of glitch in this bomb that's made very poorly. And so that can always add to the humor and excitement of the scene. Or we definitely are adding jokes all the time. Like in season three, episode 8, the finale, kind of the only joke in the whole episode was something we came up with at the end of kind of in the background when the detective sits down and is like, "Has anyone heard from Albert?" And in the background, you kind of see Chief Kraus, Gary Kraus, and he says, "I haven't seen him since he cocked his gun in front of us and stormed out of here." And that was something that we joked around about of like, what would he say? Like just exactly what happened, probably. And that's always something that we came up with in post. Or some of I think this year, one of the funnier ones that made us laugh super hard was during Gene Cousineau's one man show. It was kind of just walking backstage, and we came up with the idea that he was trying to turn the music off, but instead he turned it all the way up. And so it made it really loud. And then he said, "Shit," turns it right off. So just like little jokes like that throughout that are kind of made in post. To, so yeah, always kind of like writing and thinking, and phone calls a lot of times have jokes that we write, or the bomb helpline. There was a lot of stuff that we wrote in post. So yeah, always trying to make jokes and make it make more sense and just have it be funny or intriguing or have some kind of dynamics to it is always a goal. Trying to think of other ones. There's a lot. It's always a lot. Always adding a lot.
No, I still think that's cool though, that having that even in post, sort of adding in jokes and adding in a little bit like tidbits to make people laugh. For the bomb, for example, or even like where's Albert? I think that's still like, even though you've recorded, everything's been, as they say, in the can, you can still sort of just sprinkle in a little bit more and improve it a bit more.
Yeah, and I guess specifically with Barry, the last couple of seasons, there have been things that don't quite make sense or need a little more help. And we've done some reshoots. And so that's been extremely helpful and extremely fun because then we know exactly the elements that we're missing or the jokes that don't quite hit, and we can make those really work well. So that's also a big part of making sure the story works, and editing on the show is just tracking all the characters and making sure even when you are doing big time jumps or doing big character jumps that you've kind of laid the groundwork enough so that people are still tracking the story.
Yeah, especially in like season 4, where you have such a big time jump between episodes, where I think 4 and 5,
It's at the
yeah.
end of episode 4 you make the big time jump, and then episode 5 you're in the future.
Yeah, you're in that sort of weird, not weird, but it's that sort of, as an audience member, I had no idea what was going on until you sort of went along with it and then understood what was happening and what was revealed. And I think as as in episode 5, you do sort of get a little bit more of a horror element to it all,
Mm-hmm.
where you sort of get that, you start getting that horror element and you start getting that sort of like, oh man, this has taken a really dark turn. I think one of the scariest, this is probably one of the scariest scenes of the whole show is the knock at the door, and the fact that you hear the knock and it's like, who is that knocking at whatever time? And then it kind of, you kind of just like, he just, Barry stands there the whole night waiting for someone to come, but you don't know if that's someone knocking or if it's just his self-conscious.
Yeah, I think that starting with episode 5 of season 4, you're definitely in their headspace a little bit, and they're in very isolated country, and they don't have a lot of connection to outside people, and people really don't know who they are, and they'll never know their true selves. And so having that element of like fear is a very powerful thing. And when there's a knock at the door and Barry just kind of walks out and is just staring into space, and maybe you hear something but you don't exactly know, that's kind of the feeling that is so compelling about where they're at in their lives at that moment. Is it's just this constant fear of people knowing who they are, finding them, and being on the run and having this family. It seems very isolating, and episode 5 just explores that isolation. And then you kind of see in episode 6 another instance of, did that actually happen, when there's kind of a figure behind Sally and she's drunk and you don't really know what's happening, but it could have been subconscious, but you don't really know. It's just another kind of exploration into their mindset, which is a fun thing that happens throughout the show, and more so in the last couple of seasons.
With that episode, that scene that you're mentioning with Sally, that was absolutely terrifying because it comes out of nowhere. And I know it's like really odd to sort of say in a sort of comedic show, but you're right in terms of like, you don't know what's going on in their mind. But I think that's also, this is just a theory, but in my mind, I think as you said, that's like you're stepping into Sally's psyche, in that she's kind of stuck in that mental prison and she needs to get out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's just that feeling of being trapped or fearful is expressed in a very creative way. I like the way, and even at the beginning of the season, with some of those kind of mirages that he has while in prison, of looking at Fuchs playing with him as a kid, and then this kind of wedding party comes out of nowhere and brings him into this world where him and Sally are dancing, and it feels just very much like, he's lost it, and but trying to hold on to those feelings that he had as a kid or with Sally, or these really important moments emotionally in his life.
Yeah, and you just see the whole change of Barry's character as well, in terms of, you could tell that he's sort of trying to be good, and he's found it trying to be good via God rather than as a person on a sort of like exploring a journey.
Yeah, Clark is definitely on a journey to fulfill his need to feel vindicated, whether it's like listening to all the podcasts. That was another one that we were like, the podcasts that were written didn't quite hit the story moments we needed. And so we spent a lot of time talking about what they needed to be and then kind of rewriting in post of like what it could be and how each one would progress so that by the end you know exactly what he's doing is looking for somebody to say that murder is not a crime, and he says bingo and he found it. So Clark is on a real journey, and
And
Emily too, you know, they're
yeah, I think Emily's more of a sort of on a journey not to hide herself, whilst Clark is that, as he said, he's trying to justify actions of a previous life to be like, yep, I can do this, not a problem.
right, exactly. I like that scene of Emily and Clark in the when he's trying to get her to set up the gun and they kind of go over all of the reasons and kind of like you get into his headspace because he's like, the only other option is we put John in an orphanage and we kill ourselves. Like in such a flippant way, talk about how desperate he is always struck me as very funny.
I always think that's like also quite dark. Like it's never like a look, if you can't do this, not a problem. I can teach you and we can go through it. It's just like, no, let's go with like 0 to 100, bam.
Exactly.
But also, in episode 7, we do have like a long take scene where NoHo Hank loads up a mortar rocket launcher to destroy a house that Fuchs is staying in, and you see it like the scene seems like it's like one big long take, which as an editor must be quite a dream, right? Like you get a scene that gets played out, you put it on your timeline, you don't need to worry about it. But I have a feeling that is not the case. When you're in an edit suite and you have a scene like that, how do you go about editing it? Are there secret stitches in it where you use different takes? Or is there a way that it needs to be paced in a certain manner that is correct for like the jokes to land, but also for the scene to unravel?
I guess in terms of Barry, there are some very long takes. Some of them are just long takes and they play out as is, and then some of them there are hidden cuts or things we do to make them work. And so the scene in episode 7 of them sending a rocket to Fuchs's house and then getting in the car and driving to that next parking lot. That's all just one take. And they did it twice and it was perfect both times. And so that's just great job directing, great job acting, great job with AD and all the stunt people. And so that's no hidden stitches. All I did was a bunch of sound design. And so mostly just put that in the timeline and focus on sound design and making sure it's funny and coming up with the right sound when Hank is falling down, tumbling down the mountain with his phone, and then the phone dies, and then there's like this funny sound at the end. Things like that are the things I'll focus on. But with a big long take like that, sometimes it is just sound design. Then there's like other longer takes of like when Sally's making John a grilled cheese in episode 6. And then there's this long take of her kind of grabbing the grilled cheese, walking to the stove, and then grabbing the vodka and walking back to the table. There was takes where she was pouring a lot of vodka into the cup, and then we had to make sure that you didn't think that she was killing John. And so there's a hidden cut in there to make sure that it's the appropriate amount of vodka. So sometimes there are hidden cuts, but I'd say very a lot of the times it's mostly just sound design and no hidden cuts, no tricks, just letting the one take go.
Because when you have those sort of long takes, as I said, with I think episode 6, you were saying where Sally is with the vodka and then cutting it down. Because if you don't, then it feels like in the later on in the scenes where it does play out, it does look like she might have killed John without realizing, which is an extremely dark turn that I don't think
It's
works with
something
it.
no one ever wanted. No one ever wants you to think that she wants to kill John. Just,
No, it's just a
yeah.
case of like she doesn't know how to look after him in the sort of nicest sense. Not as in like a bad way, but it's more of a like a more of a way of like, oh yeah, we're just gonna I'm just going to do this because I don't know how to look after our son. But I think with the other long take with the NoHo Hank scene, I think that's quite incredible to hear that it's only been done in so little takes and that how it just worked out perfectly.
Yeah, I mean the stunt team on Barry is incredible, and they do a lot of incredible stunts, like getting people to be buried by sand or the big long chases, and they do such a great job that having two takes of doing a rocket launch into kind of a car stunt and then running and having people with guns and then falling down the mountain is like one of the impressive things, and that's kind of what they're best at. And then there's VFX added and a bunch of work with the sound team who's incredible as well. So
Yeah, and then it comes
everyone's
out with
coming
a
together to make it work.
yeah, everybody comes together to make a delicious 30-minute episode of great TV. What I was going to ask as well is, what was your favorite scene to edit?
Favorite scene to edit. Oh boy, I like forgot that this was part of the. I'd say one of my favorite scenes to edit is in the last episode, but I'm not gonna add too much
You know,
about it.
you know what? Because this comes out, what I'll say is this comes out after it's aired. So I'm going to take my headphones out so it doesn't spoil it. But
It's okay. I
if you
I'm
say
I'm gonna pick a different
if you talk about it,
one.
I can take my headphones out, put a thumbs up once you're done. Yeah.
No, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
gonna come up with a different one. I'm going with a different.
This is a favorite scene that you've edited, not someone else. That'll be another question.
Right, I see. I guess in terms of editing on season four, one of my favorite scenes or just episodes to edit was episode five because it was such a different pace and it was such a different tone that getting to know these new characters and diving into their very strange world out in the bleak plains was very fun to edit. I really like the scene of Sally in the diner with the guy, kind of like talking about how badass he is. That one, I really like it. It's very strange, it's very weird and dark, but it always kind of made me laugh. But I would say if I had to pick one, I think that at the end of episode three in season four, when Bill sees Fred Armisen, who is just so sweaty, and then he explodes his hand trying to kill Barry, and then Barry shoots and kills his brother and podcast co-host Nestor. I think that was one of my favorite scenes to edit because going through the footage of on all sides, everyone was very funny. So the detectives were very funny, and all of that improv was so, so great. And then just having those looks between him and Barry knowing that Fred is there to kill him, all that was one of my favorites to edit this season.
I think that prisons shootout, that's a really good scene to choose from because when you watch it back, it's that moment of like when you're holding on to Bill Hader's character where he's kind of looking and he sees everybody and then and then it cuts to Fred Armisen and he's just putting this sort of face of like, I guess maybe constipation is the best way to sort of describe it. I
He's
don't
like
know.
about to poop his pants or just like completely explode. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he's just and
funny.
sweating and he's just sort of that like, I'm just gonna explode, but he's got a bomb sort of thing. And then
Exactly.
it's also the facial expressions of like cutting between Fred Armisen looks up to his partner, and then also the cutting between the FBI agents where Barry points out, it's like, yeah, that guy's here to kill me. And everyone's just like, nah, don't be silly. But then no one
Right.
knows who's actually him. And it's just like the sort of thing is that Barry's playing the straight man whilst everybody's playing sort of the comedic value. And then it's just like, nope, here we go. And then he blows off his own hand. Fred Armisen
Yeah.
blows off his own fingers. And then everybody
Yeah.
sort of
One
ends up
of
dead.
Yeah, it's like one of the more actiony sequences when it's somehow so tame. That's like the funny thing about working on Barry is all the action is kind of minimized, even though people are getting shot and stuff. It's generally not that explicit. But this is the that that that's one of the scenes that really follows that. I do think in film and TV, sometimes people being sweaty doesn't really come across you have to make them so much sweatier than they actually look in real life. And so when I got the footage of him being that sweaty, it made me laugh so hard because he's just absolutely soaking. Kind of same with Gene Cousineau after his one man show. How sweaty he gets is a good part of that whole scene.
I do wonder like how much water they must have sprayed on Fred Armisen to just sort of be like,
Yeah.
okay, no, sweatier. How does it look now? No, get him sweatier. All right, keep going, keep going. And it's just like poor guy must have been like looked like he just come out of a swimming pool,
Exactly.
standing there. But it just like it's just so good. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Also, just to sort of switch it up, what was your favorite scene that you didn't edit?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite scenes that I did not edit was Cristobal and Noho breaking up. I thought and then they kill Cristobal. That scene I did not edit. I was there for kind of the reworking of it, but I didn't edit that one. And I think that just turned out so moving and intense and so tragic. Frankie did a great job on that one.
I think it's such a heartbreaking scene. You're just like you're there. He's made a choice of like I've done this for us, Cristobal, and then it's like this is not what we wanted. This is not what we needed. And then as a audience member as well, you kind of get tricked with the shallow depth of focus of like you think that's Cristobal in the background. It's actually just one of the Chechens, and you're just like, oh no. But then you see that he's been killed, and you think, oh man.
Yeah, I think that scene is so incredible in the way that the even the dialogue plays out of like first Noho Hank is being such a badass person and he's so powerful and he's saying that like you sound naive when you say that we're all going to live in harmony, and he's being so tough, which is kind of something he's trying out. And then Cristobal does not react well to it. And then he kind of backpedals and he's like, let's just cool off and try it again and then start fresh in the morning. And then by the end he's pleading with them and he's like, you can't leave, you know too much, you can't leave. I just think the way that it all plays out and everyone's talking over each other, it's so tense and it feels like such a real dynamic of like you're trying something out but somebody really doesn't react well to it and then it just goes off the rails. Any kind of breakup or big fight and it just feels very real, very sad scene.
Yeah, I think it's like the like classic sort of backfire. Yeah, it's just like that sort of oh, you think what you've done is correct, but actually, even though you've been thinking it's correct the whole time, you can't convince yourself that it was, and then it's all sort of backfired, and then you just like you've lost everything. And I don't know, just like oh, it's such a sort of like oh man, you kind of just like oh no hope, what have you done? But there's such as life if you want to be a badass gangster, right?
I mean, that's the thing about Barry is that these are not good characters. They're not good people. So
No, they're not.
sometimes that comes out.
No, it comes out in the wash, basically, as they say. A karma gets you in a weird way.
There's no forgive.
Exactly. Just to sort of wrap up the episode, how have you found the reaction to Barry and the episodes that you edited? Because looking back, you've garnered some critical acclaim by winning an Emmy as well, which must have been a really surreal moment for them to be like, and the winner is Ali Greer. Um, how do you take that all in? How was those sort of moments and getting that acclaim from your peers as well?
Yeah, it's very surreal. It's very surreal, and in the moment, just kind of blacked out. Didn't really remember anything. What I said, had no idea. I think that we worked so hard in such a isolated situation for so long of like really working on these characters and really making sure that the story works and that the season works for us and for a few close people that we let watch it. And so many times I just hit save and then forget that other people see it. So then for it to come back in such a huge way of being nominated and then winning is just so surreal. I always like forget that people are watching and enjoying, and once in a while a friend will text and say, "Oh, I saw what you were doing and I liked it." But for the most part, just try to make sure that everything is like something I'm proud of and that I work as hard as I possibly can to make the show work. And it's always like very good and humbling the day after winning the Emmy, I spoke with Bill Hader, and he was just saying, it doesn't really mean much. And that was like a good bringing me back to the ground moment of like him reminding us that we do the hard work, and being humble is a big part of being good at the job. So
Oh wow, that's quite lame. But it's like in a good way though, because I think it's like I guess it's like getting atop of the mountain, like you've accompanied it, but then there's always going to be another mountain to climb, right? And I guess with another series of Barry, there's that sort of mountain of like we've got another series to cut. Yours and that sort of famous phrase of like you're only as good as your last work, right?
yeah, I'm always surprised that Hollywood is like a very self-congratulatory business. And so, my sister or my brother, who he's like a doctor, he doesn't get an award for like the best anesthesiologist given to a 10-year-old with a pre-existing condition or something like that. Like there's no awards for the specific great work that he does. So being really connected with that and making sure that I remember that I'm happy people are entertained, and also there's a lot of really good work being done by people that don't get the credit and congratulations that, everyone deserves a big congratulations for all the hard work they're doing.
I guess it's just like always different because if you were like a doctor, for example, as you said, you're not going to get an award of like the most lives saved in a calendar year compared to like people in Hollywood where it's like the best costume design or whatever. But I guess like I can't. I'm not even going into to compare the two because it's just like we make entertainment whilst people actually go out and make a difference by saving lives as a doctor or not. But I still think, in a way, like getting that attention for your work and having peers sort of recognize the work that you put in and how important your work is to like a show as well.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool to be recognized by my peers, and I feel very honored. And working on Barry is in some ways, it ends up being a very simple show in the way it's edited and the way it styles and all of that. But we work extremely hard, and it's incredible to be recognized for that. And the episode that I was recognized, the finale of season 3, is really the acting was so incredible in making sure that those emotional feelings continued throughout the whole episode, and getting to edit a sequence where you just get footage of a wall and somebody reacting to a blank wall, and then creating an entire sequence where multiple things happen and there's dynamics and there's all these sound. One of the most fun things I could ever possibly imagine as an editor, when you're kind of given these very loose parameters of what it could be, and being able to sculpt it and shape it and make it work and make it feel emotionally compelling, is really quite exciting.
Well, I still think that, like, that episode 8, that final scene where Barry goes to confront Jim Marcia and then how that whole scene is played out, it's just wow, because it's the sound design of just you think Barry's going to be this badass, he's going to do what Gene Cousineau has asked him to do, and then actually Gene Cousineau's acted the shit out of the whole situation by convincing Barry, and then it's all just been one big setup. And it's just when you hold on to Bill Hader's face of just like freeze, put the gun down, and it's just when you see his face of like, oh man, I've been betrayed. What's gone on? It's like heartbreaking, but also not at the same time. Heartbreaking for Barry because he thought he was doing the right thing, but then also at the same time not, because it's just like this is not like morally, it's like killing someone to sort of protect yourself is not gonna sort of work.
Yeah, he's a very complicated character, and when Barry gets captured at the end of season 3, it's really emotional and crazy, and he sees his mentor of Gene Cousineau kind of standing there as he's arrested, and it's very intense. And then it's so funny to me that then the next season, in the first episode of season 4, when he gets on the phone and his first words are, "Did you trick me?" Like Barry is the dumbest human in the whole world. He still hasn't understood what happened, and he's just like calls Kusunu and is like, "Wait, did you trick me?" Like he's like a 5-year-old who does not understand what happened, and it always made me laugh so hard. Those moments where you see Barry just as being dumb as rocks.
I guess Barry has that mentality that he always needs someone to lead him. For example, Fuchs, or then even to an extent NoHo Hank, and then Gene, because he needs to make up for what he's done. And he does everything in his power to sort of help him out. And it's just like, I don't think you know what you're doing there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing that Barry, he's just not the smartest. Like he made Sally a little montage and it just said the things he liked, trying to open up to Sally in the form of creating a little collage, not a montage. I guess I think it was the middle of season 3, maybe episode 5, he tries to open up to Sally and to show his love for her. He leaves her a little collage and it just has all the things that he likes as a person on it. And in that collage, it just has the word good. Like he sounds stupid. He just has no ability to have a complex thought. It's funny when that comes out.
Yeah, and that's just the genius of the whole character. Ali, thank you so much for your time. Barry is streaming now on. It's not even HBO. It's just Max, isn't it now? Barry's streaming on Max, and in the UK, it is on Sky Comedy. Check it out. There's nothing, there's if you've already got this far, sorry for the spoilers, but go out and enjoy the show. Thank you again, Ali.
Thank you so much for being here. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. You take care now. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.